going to live stream the meeting. Setting up your meeting for YouTube Live. Done. Redirecting to YouTube. So we have a sunshine. Okay, I have no idea what's happening here. Do we need to hit play? Oh, we are on YouTube. Where are you? Oh, it's kind of got a delay. All right. All right, this is so awkward. I put you on gallery. There's a delay. This is awkward. I'm gonna have to mute it. I'm gonna mute that. So I'm watching that catch up. And then once I want to make sure, okay, there we go. I put you on gallery view. All right. Well, we're on YouTube.
There you go. rolling with whatever comes our way.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. So this is Michelle Lastly with Balance Shared. I host a space where I truly believe we are better together. And today I am so grateful to welcome my guest, Kamini Wood. And here you are. Welcome, Kamini.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Thank you. We were planning on being on Facebook, but the interwebs said no. And so we're on YouTube right now.
There you go.
So I wanted to just share a little bit about you before we dive into what we're going to talk about today, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So I am a certified life coach. I work with high achievers on dealing with stress, anxiety, overwhelm, trying to do it all perfectly, living as a hostage to either expectations or external validation. And I help those individuals realign with who they are authentically, rediscover their uniqueness as a gift so that they can become their own resilient self leader and go from box checking to living the life that they want, not through
Awesome.
shoulds or ought tos.
Right. Yeah. So speaking of shoulds, can we just start with should?
Sure.
So we actually had to delay our chat a little bit because one of the roles that you and I both now play is teacher mom.
Yes.
And my kiddo, I only have one, he had some questions about some of his assignments and he was looking at them and like, I should get these done. He had some idea attached to an exact time frame that he should get them done. And what I told him was, there are no shoulds. Can you maybe offer your insight as to why we could embrace leaving the shoulds alone?
So, gosh, I love the fact that you use that as an example because I just lived through something very similar with my 6-year-old. So I'm mom to 5, 18 all the way down to 6. And I had a very similar experience with her yesterday where she was having a meltdown because her Spanish class that's now online, she couldn't get the information that she needed. And she felt like she should be able to understand it and get it done in a certain time frame. So back to what you said in terms of the why we should let go of shoulds or the how. Honestly, when we are living our lives to the shoulds, we are living within a container and in a box, and that box is defined by something external from ourselves. And it's when we are constantly living to these external measurements that we lose sight of who we are and what we are capable of doing. I equate it to that of the distinction between a thermometer and a thermostat.
Mm-hmm.
So a thermostat is constantly measuring the external temperature and tells us what's going on externally. A thermometer measures the internal temperature and tells us what's happening inside. And so whenever we hear ourselves go through the shoulds, we can recognize that we are living more like a thermostat and not a thermometer.
That does make sense. So one of the pieces of wisdom I have really embraced over the years is actually from Byron Katie, and this consideration of whose business is it?
Yes. Yes.
So that's almost like what you're saying is another way to look at whose business is it?
Yes.
And yeah, do you want to talk about that?
100%. So, I mean, it's when we hear ourselves thinking about shoulds, we have to ask ourselves, is that my responsibility? Is that my business? I mean, I love Byron Katie actually, because she talks about like the question of, is it true? Right?
Hmm.
When we ask ourselves, when we're having a thought and we ask that question, it's such a powerful question. Is this actually true? Do we know it to be 100% true? Is it possible that something else could be happening here? It goes down to when we want to define something as good or bad. You know, we get to ask ourselves, is it actually true that this one thing is good or this one thing is bad? It's all relative to what our thoughts are creating, right? And the
Hmm.
experience, the reality that we're creating for ourselves. So the same thing goes for the shoulds and the you know, understanding of, is there really is there another way to look at this? And is it something that we're defining for ourselves, or are we allowing somebody else to define it for us? And if we're allowing somebody else to define what we should be doing, we can then ask ourselves, is it their business to do that? Or is it my own business to do that?
Yes.
And even as parents, we want our kids to be happy, but we have to ask ourselves, is it really our business to define happiness
Mm.
for them? Or can we contribute to their happiness? And there's a difference between the two of those.
Oh, I love that. So you are a coach through and through. You coach your clients, you coach your kids, and it's just like you definitely wear the coach archetype, profession aside. And you have come up with a really beautiful list of 5 tangible tips that we can take away with right now when we are getting wrapped up in the day to day. Like I was sharing with you how I'm grieving the loss of my hours, and
Yes.
how you've shared how you've had to repocket your hours, and
Yep.
everybody's shifted, right? Some people, their jobs have literally evaporated because governments have said that they're not essential right now.
Right.
And we have, a moral obligation to try to keep other people healthy, and so we're going to do this. And so there's so much grieving and change, and just this very, I am saying that our quarantine here in Oregon started on March 14th, because that was really that's a Saturday, but that was the day the governor, like, schools were just going from home that following Monday. And so
Mhm.
Friday before the 13th was when my kiddo got all of his things from home, and it was really like that Saturday is when it started. So now we are a month into this. It's April 15th right now. Our tax day has been deferred. We're like, we're in it. We're in it. And
Yes.
so, what's the first tip you have for people when they're managing their shoulds and all of this?
Yeah. The very first thing that I would say is to get present, right? So our minds are racing with all of the things, the uncertainty, the worry, I wish it was a different way. When is this going to end? And so the tip really is to get present with where you are right in this moment. And so sometimes I'll talk to people about, breathing techniques, because that helps, just kind of quiet the mind. But sometimes breathing techniques are not possible for some people because it actually causes more anxiety. And then
Mm,
also, right now, when you're in the middle of it and you've got a screaming child or something's going haywire, you can't exactly take 20 minutes to go meditate. So the best tool that I have to get present is actually to just get in tune with your five senses in a specific moment. Like, what am I hearing? What can I touch? What do I smell? You know, what really, what is going on around me in this exact moment? What do I sense in my body? And it takes 2 minutes. It takes 2 minutes to go through those things. I will say that for me personally, I really do focus on what I'm hearing, because when you for me personally, when I get present with just being able to hear, for instance, the birds chirping,
mhm.
all of a sudden, all those thoughts swarming through my mind settle. And that's really what we need right now, is to allow just the settling of all the swirling thoughts, even if it is for a few minutes, because when we do allow them to settle and we're present in our moment, we can then figure out what our next best step forward is.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. I love this grounding to senses too, because it's something really tangible. And when you immediately said it, I imagine myself in the kitchen. In the kitchen during dinner time is where I tend to get more interactions from the two people in my household who I love dearly and tend to talk at the same time, meaning the husband and the kiddo.
Right. Right. Yes.
And I'm watching the pan start to boil
Mhm.
over and the thing saute in the other pan, and, maybe I've got running water because I'm rinsing out a
Yep.
dish,
Yep.
and so okay, what am I touching? The floor. Yes, yeah.
Yes.
So beautiful.
Yep.
Oh, what's your second tip?
The second one is to find a way to give yourself a break,
Mm.
commonly known as a timeout. Um, we tend to do this with our children when they're younger and they're having a moment, and we tell them, you need to go take a timeout. Well, there's wisdom in that, and us as adults need those timeouts too. And so it's okay to just find a way to give yourself whatever it may be, whether it's 2 minutes or 5 minutes, because we're all in these homes, right? We're all in our homes. We don't have a lot of personal space right now.
Mhm.
We're also trying to manage all the things. And so sometimes it just is a matter of giving yourself a timeout. And even if it requires you to go sit in the bathroom for 5 minutes and just close the door, just giving yourself that timeout. As we know with our children, when we put them in a timeout and allow them to have whatever emotion they're having rise and crest, it eventually moves through and then they're able to converse with us and able to go play and do whatever they need to. We as adults need to do the same thing. We need to give ourselves that time, space, and grace to have our moment, let whatever emotion is happening happen without judgment. And then we're able to move forward after that. It's when we don't give ourselves that time out that then, um, we might say something that we don't mean, or we use a tone that we really don't want to use. And then the people and our loved ones that we are, in these homes with, they can't unhear that. And
Mm,
so then of course you end up with regret. And so this is a way to just kind of you get to choose how you're reacting to your situations. And if you can choose to give yourself that space, however you have to do it and take that time out, it could at least hopefully build more harmony in your house right now.
right. And at no point are you saying we ignore the emotion. You're very
Correct.
specifically like working through the emotion.
Yes.
Yeah.
I truly wholeheartedly believe that emotional health is so important, and emotions are not meant to be put in a container. They are meant to be in motion. And it's when we put them in a container and try to ignore them or distract ourselves or numb ourselves from them, and we don't allow them to do and be present, they will keep circulating. And eventually you might end up with some type of volcanic explosion because they're going to keep coming around. They have to be they have to be able to be in motion. They have to be able to do their thing. And we have to be able to look at them and say, okay, I'm feeling a certain way, and this is where it's coming from. And being able to work through the emotion, allow it to show us what it wants to show us. And I'm not saying live there, not live, like, don't
Yes.
identify with the emotion and stay in the emotion, but let it show you what it's there to do. So, like, for instance, when we're really feeling anxious and fearful, it's like, okay, I'm feeling afraid right now. I see you. I see you, fear. Now, what are you trying to tell me? What is it that I'm really afraid of in this moment? And then work through it that way. Don't ignore it, because if we ignore it, it's still there. It's still unprocessed. And we can grow. We grow through our emotions. We don't need to run away from them.
So I love the consideration that feelings and these kinds of things are teachers, and they've got like a lesson to teach us. And if we ignore the lesson, the teacher keeps coming back.
That's right.
It could be feelings, emotions, it could be events that happen on
Right.
repeat, whatever, that sort of
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
Uh, so you, I believe, enacted step number 3 or tip number 3 prior to our call.
Yes, yes. Be forgiving. But it's forgiveness not only of the people on our house, but forgiving of yourself, right?
Mm, mhm.
So it's recognizing that we are doing the best that we can with whatever elements we have in front of us, whatever information we have in front of us, and just allow that time to not judge, right? Just be forgiving for the fact that we're showing up and we are doing the best we can. So it's, when you're talking about having to, reset your day and reset the structure of when you can meet with clients, it's being forgiving of the fact that you can't meet with them, like you're not able to meet with them through the hours that you wanted to, but then also recognizing you're doing the best you can and you are showing up for your clients. It's just in a different time frame.
Mhm.
That's okay, because you are doing the best you can and you are continuing to show up, and it's focusing on that rather than the I'm not doing X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. You talk a lot you have spoken to me a lot about choices
Hmm.
and really being conscious of the choices we're making and how we're framing and viewing a thing.
Hmm.
You want to
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit more? Peel another layer to that?
So yeah, I talk a lot about also like just resiliency in general, and in order to build resilience, so our ability to, and resilience meaning our ability to face adverse situations, right? Being able to face them, to come back
No, no, no.
these stressful situations, we can identify, what are the choices in front of us, what is what would be the possible outcomes should we choose A, B, or C? And then what is the best choice to move forward? And recognizing that we have those choices actually builds our resilience factor. Secondly, in terms of choices, we get to choose how we react to situations, right? So a situation happens, but it's our thoughts that create whether, and I said this before, whether that's a good or a bad situation.
Mhm.
And so when we take ownership of the choice, move from this being a hostage to external expectations, validation, what have you, when we recognize our power that we have the ability to choose how we react to a situation.
Awesome. So the internet was doing some funny things.
I noticed that. I kept talking, so I'm not sure what actually was included in that and what was lost.
We will know when I do the recording and when I get that, and then that'll be for all the world to see. So, thank you for whatever we were able to hear of the choices and whatnot.
Yep.
Uh, I would love to dig in a little bit to step number 4 or tip
Yeah.
number 4.
Yeah. So this one is the be playful and find joy. And the reason why I bring this up is because playfulness, joyfulness, it raises the vibration, right? It's an automatic level up in terms of the vibration that we're feeling, the one in our house. And I was reminded of this actually in our own house the other day when my oldest daughter was cooking dinner and she was dancing around. She's an aspiring ballerina and she was literally doing her ballet moves, but she had tongs in her hands and she was like clacking them around. And I
Oh my
just
god.
started cracking up. And immediately I felt better. And as I started laughing, she started laughing. And you could see that like all of the weight that she's been carrying around was
Mm.
lifted.
Oh,
And so
nice.
that's why I say, as a household, as we're trying to work through this, if we can find ways to bring joy or playfulness into our day, where it's not the box checking if I've got to get this assignment done for school and then the parents are worried about work, and it's just we're here, we're present, and we're having some type of fun together.
Mhm.
That will automatically raise that vibration in your house. It will contribute to this building of harmony as we're all moving through this strange time.
Yes, yes. So, I love your last tip because I don't do this.
Yeah. The last tip right now, I think it is so important to over communicate. So I mentioned before, how we need to get in touch with what we're feeling, like our emotions, then ask ourselves what it is I need, and then being able to communicate to those in our house. Or being able to communicate even to like family and friends, even if it's via Zoom or via FaceTime or what
Mhm.
have you. It's over communicating right now because we are in these close quarters. We are in stressful times. We're very uncertain about what's happening. And if we leave anything up to somebody else's interpretation, miscommunication can happen.
Mm.
So, right now, it is so important to over communicate and to be very diligent in communicating our requests of the people around us, especially when we are in close quarters. So for instance, if you're having a stressful moment and you recognize I'm feeling overwhelmed, I really need some space. And then in a very loving, gentle way, you can communicate to those around you, I really just need, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I need a little bit of space. Instead of you're bothering me, you're being too
Mm.
loud. Because as soon as you say you, it becomes the other person is in defense mode, right? So it's
Mhm.
really about yourself getting really tuned into what you need and want, and then just communicating that to the people that you're with. Again, because it reduces the unsaid, unspoken words that can be left to,
Regret.
misinterpretation.
Yeah, and misinterpretation. Yes. These were so beautiful. So I'm going to say them one more time.
Mhm.
Uh, if you find yourself in COVID stress or any stress really, but especially during this time where unprecedented, it can't be said enough. Some people might feel it's overused, but it really, we are in an unprecedented time, a global lockdown, where we're at home with people, and we don't always see them all the time unless you're maybe a homeschooling work at home family, which there are those out there, right?
Right, right.
uh so step number one, or tip number one, get present. Number two, find ways to forgive yourself or to give yourself a break. Number three, be forgiving. Number four, playfulness and joy. Find ways to bring those in. And number five, over communicate.
Yes.
Oh, I am so glad that we were able to do this live in some way, and we will make sure that this finds its way to Facebook and some of the other platforms later. I am recording it as well. So if you caught us on YouTube, I don't do YouTube very much. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
This was fun, Michelle. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to know you, and I'm so glad that you have been willing to be a guest on my platforms.
Absolutely.
All right. Have a great day, world.
Bye.
Stop the recording.